Hey guys, and welcome back to the Nordic Sound Reviews. Today we are going to be taking a look at the new album from Maija Kauhanen and Johannes Geworkian Hellman, Migrating. So, painting vivid impressionistic landscapes through their ancient instruments, Nordic folk titans Maija Kauhanen and Johannes Geworkian Hellman joined forces on their debut duo album, Migrating. Each of these musicians are heavy hitters, or even icons if I can be so bold, on their respective instruments, with Maija on the kantele and Johannes on the hurdy-gurdy. So I've been fairly curious in the lead up to this record to see how these musicians were going to pull off blending these instruments, which, despite being rather ancient, have seldom been put together, and certainly not at this caliber. Further, Migrating brings with it a strong concept as written for the album's liner notes. The theme of the album is inspired by migrating birds of passage, who regularly during their lives travel from one place to another. Their sense of navigation is a result of combining their different senses to find the right way. When the time comes to return home, they are somehow able to find the way, tells Maija about the album. For us, music and art is a way to describe and portray our observations. When we are playing, we are traveling, trying to combine our senses to find the common direction. The music gives us the possibility to migrate to other places, both imaginary and those from our memories. So with an inspiring concept leading the charge of Migrating, backed by two remarkable musicians of the Nordic folk scene, let's dive in to see what awaits listeners in Migrating. So the record kicks off with this track, Birds of Passage, opening with a hypnotic kantele line which paves the way for a serenading hurdy-gurdy melody, introduced by imitating a bird call in the higher registers. The gurdy line has an interesting balance of feeling equally composed and improvisatory, a balance which will be threaded through much of the record. In other words, it's really hard for me even to tell as a listener what is being improvised and what has been previously composed and is being followed in a score or something. And that is a really nice balance to strike, especially in this kind of record, which is sort of towing the line between folk and classical or more artistic music. So halfway through this track, though, the kantele breaks its rolling pattern to change up the texture and give Maija's voice the lead, with Johannes now accompanying towards the end. This track introduces a few elements which will characterize the rest of the album, essentially. A heavy impressionistic flair, indicated by the beautiful album art as well, textured use of vocals, and a playful imitating of various bird calls. Like Cricket in the background, who was throwing a temper tantrum just a few moments ago because I locked him out of the room. But Mother's Song then brings the album back down to earth after the lofty heights of Birds of Passage. This track turned out to actually be my favorite on the record. Usually it changes on repeated listens. When I listen to an album the first time, it's this track, second time it's this track. But no, from the first listen all the way to however many times I listened to it, this song continued to be the most memorable one for me. Notably due to the continued hypnotic use of ostinatos, which are repeated musical motifs, which create a very cyclical sound that obscures time. This kind of writing complements the aesthetic goals of the record laid out by the artists pretty well, in that it opens up a dream or trance-like quality in the music. The vocals in this track, arguably its main event, are the perfect example of this, and stand out as the most memorable part of the whole album for me, putting the beauty of the instruments and the musician's voice on full display. So from here, the tone of Migrating is pretty much set, and more or less gives you more of what the first two tracks introduce, but with some added twists along the way. Dark Valley, for instance, introduces an Eastern tonality to it, as well as the first real use of lyrics. The Island is Impressionism incarnate as an evocative ambient piece depicting the misty illusion of the track's namesake appearing through the fog. Side by Side serves as the only song of the album in the traditional sense, with lyrics, a verse, and all that. While First Flight introduces an experimental element to the use of chromaticism along with what I can loosely define as some kind of polka rhythm. And then finally, the album concludes on Your Wings Will Carry, which ends the album on the same soaring note that it opened with, rounding off the record in a nice and satisfying way. What stands out to me by the album's end is the sheer amount of music in it. Now, I know that sounds strange, but bear with me here. There are just so many layers, so many twists and turns that by the end of each track, you feel as though it's hard to pin down just one thing to talk about. And even after a few listens of the entire album, I, by the end of it, felt almost overwhelmed by just how much music I was hearing. I can't really think of another way to put it. And while this might sound like a strange thing to say in a complimentary way, this is a breath of fresh air for me and challenged me as a listener in a way that I wish I was challenged more often, particularly by folk musicians. And here, it is a good thing to be challenged by a musician, because if we weren't, then we would get bored listening to music. We might just not think about it as being challenged that in that way. But whenever we're listening to music that really grabs our attention and we feel the need to listen to it over and over again to really hear what the music is saying, that's what I mean by it challenges me. Not challenges as in this is difficult to listen to. No, challenges in like a stimulating and a provocative way. That's what I mean here. But beyond the sheer density of the album are also the characteristics that I teased earlier. The masterful interplay between these instruments, which you don't hear together often, with the layered weaving of vocals, which create a sonic experience like no other, really. Only further enhanced by the added effects, such as the string scraping on the consola or the bird calls on the higher register of the hurdy-gurdy, which creates a pretty rich sonic atmosphere. In other words, we very rarely hear the consola and the hurdy-gurdy played together, and considering that these two icons of their respective instruments are sort of giving us the first major offering of such a duo, the bar is set pretty high at the beginning. If I can summarize this review of this album in one way, it's that contemporary Nordic folk is deep in an impressionistic phase. This is a trend that started around the 2010s that is only getting more apparent with time, with acts like Stundom, Evestaden, and even older bands such as Frigg dipping their toes in the water of Impressionism with their latest album, Dreamscapes. To this end, Migrating is a beautiful further exploration of this side of Nordic folk, with both of these incredible musicians playing off of each other in a way that brings out each of their own strengths, while opening up new musical possibilities that were previously unexplored. As the resident bird guy, too, as you can tell from the background, I can also confidently say that the record delivered on its promise to evoke the avian experience from which it was inspired. So in short, I greatly look forward to seeing where this duo might take us next, and I hope you find the time to listen to Migrating from Maija Kauhanen and Johannes Geworkian Hellman. Thank you for watching. Take care.